Welcome to another episode of Positive Solutions for Life. This is Peggy Meyer. Today's guest is Mel Ferguson. Mel is a self-leadership coach and trainer from the UK. Throughout her many life experiences and challenges, she has realized the importance of leading herself well. This has turned into a passion to support others in making positive changes in their lives so they can lead themselves, their families, and their teams with courage, clarity, and confidence. And this is done by helping women clarify their values, priorities, and identify what works best for them without compromising their own well being and their relationships. So, welcome to the podcast, Mel.
Thank you so much, Peggy. I'm really excited to be here and have this conversation with you.
Oh, I'm excited for our conversation as well. And with that, can you just start off by just sharing just a little bit more about you, your journey, and how it has led to where you are today?
Okay. Yeah, it's like, okay, where do I start? So,
We'll start
um,
wherever you want.
I'm I'm a wife of nearly 30 years. We have four adult children and three granddaughters. And I
Oh.
suppose, yeah, our journey started really as a teenage mum. We were teenagers when we had our first. And so kind of self-leadership, although I didn't know that term and I didn't
Mhm,
know at the time that,
mhm,
that's kind of what I was attempting to do. It was just trying to make life work for us at that
mhm,
time, especially
mhm.
for me. And obviously, as our family grew,
Right.
the self-leadership part became more and more important.
Yeah.
Although, like I said, at the time, it just seemed lots of stress
Yeah.
and like a military operation to get everybody to where they needed to
Oh,
be
yeah.
on time. I was a director of a company in London then. My husband was a pastor at our church, four children. It was just very, very busy to say
Yes.
the least.
Oh, yeah.
But what I would say is, although things on the surface seem to be looking well and working well,
Hmm.
looking back, I think I was in a stress state for most of that time,
Hmm.
making
Hmm.
sure, everyone was kind of sorted. And what I was doing in that was neglecting my own my own self, really.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm following getting a diagnosis of a nerve condition in my face. I kind of thought that was the wake up call for me, I think, where it was like, actually, we can't just keep running at this pace. It's not sustainable.
Hmm.
And actually, what I've been doing is putting everybody's needs before myself, which I think, I'm not saying dads don't do it, but I think as mums, we are kind of can be like that.
Yes. I
So
totally
I think
relate.
that's, yeah, I think that's when I thought, actually, I need to take stock and really be intentional about how I'm leading myself. And that kind of started my journey of developing my self-awareness, my emotional intelligence,
Mhm.
setting some boundaries, which I always used to say yes to everything, um, taking rest and breaks, which I never used to do
Mhm.
unless, it was at the end of the day and it was a reward. Um, and so yeah, that's when my journey started. And because I had leadership positions up until then, coaching was kind of part of what I did.
Mhm.
And then I
Mhm.
thought, actually, if this has impacted my life so much, I just
Mhm.
let life happen and focus on everybody else. Actually, I'm sure that this is the same for lots of other women
Mhm.
out there.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, I just thought, actually, I don't want people to have maybe a 25, 30-year journey if I can help them so that their journey into self-leadership is much shorter and they can get the life that they really desire sooner.
Right.
But why would I not impart my learning and kind of knowledge and maybe help them and for them really to pick out the bits that kind of resonate with them because obviously all of our stories are different.
Yes, yes, I totally relate. I don't know if you know, but I have six kids myself, so I put myself right into that. Like chaotic, going everywhere, organization nightmare. We are living in this stress state, whether it's sleep deprivation for years and then coordinating schedules and, what ifs and, kid comes down sick, you name it all. Like we're constantly in that to-go state and thinking of others. And
Yeah.
we often neglect ourselves. And one thing that popped up is just like, okay, I've never really thought about it as self-leadership. Like you said, like before when you were younger, too, it's just like you would have never, thought of it that way. But how do you define that? Like when somebody says like, like, okay, this sounds familiar, but I would never use that term self-leadership. So how do you define that?
So for me, self-leadership is how I'm leading myself in a
Mhm.
sustainable way. So what boundaries am I choosing?
Mhm.
What breaks and rests am I putting in place? What does my self-care look like on a daily, weekly, monthly, termly, yearly
Mhm.
basis? How
Yeah.
am I increasing my self-awareness so I can know myself better, so I know what my triggers are or when I need to
Mhm.
walk away, especially tying that in with the kind of emotional intelligence. So
Right.
for me, how I lead myself impacts my family, my friends, and
Yeah.
teams that I'm leading or working with.
Right.
It starts, for me, leadership starts with me.
Yes.
And so I need to be aware of what that looks like, what I'm kind of good at, but also what needs more work. And for me, self-leadership, I'll never arrive. It's always going to be one of those things that I can learn more about myself with. And
Right.
so, yeah, I'm committed to that journey for myself and for others.
Right. Well, I feel like that's very helpful for, myself and the listeners. I feel like, because the leadership role, we always think of like, maybe somebody in corporate, or, a boss, things like that. But really taking ownership and influencing ourselves by creating those boundaries, our self-care, but it starts with self-awareness because if we don't have that, we don't know if we need any of that.
Exactly. Yeah, it's
So
so
we have
true.
you have to take a break, and taking a break to like even pause and just understand what's going on because it
Exactly.
really does affect other people and we can have like many many examples I'm sure of like okay when I'm not taking care of myself very well how do I respond to others and I bet you can tell my kids could tell you my husband could tell you if I lack my sleep if I'm don't not eating great not fueling my body very well
Yeah.
mom could get a little more cranky like maybe
Yeah.
a lot more cranky but
Yeah.
that's kind of what we're talking about right is
Definitely.
just understanding yourself, what you need, setting those boundaries so that
Yeah.
you can be there for others in your best self.
Definitely. And I think a key, I did a course a few years ago called Nonviolent Communication, and that really helped me take my self-awareness to another level. I would check in, someone would ask me how I was, and I would like, okay, how am I feeling? I would take more time. What am I
Mhm,
feeling? What are my
mhm.
needs? Do I need to make any requests of myself or others? And that kind of was really helpful as well to take it to another level.
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting because sometimes, in my years of being a mental health therapist, and we talk about nonviolent communication, people are like, I don't need that course, like like I know how to talk, I know how to communicate, but you're putting that spin on self-awareness of like, okay, it's for you to be able to understand what's going on, your feelings, and how you really want to express those
Yeah,
appropriately, is what I'm hearing.
definitely. Definitely.
So we
And
might
also, I
all
think
need that
it's,
course.
but it's that check-in, isn't it? If we're not
It
checking in
is.
with ourselves, how do we know how we feel in the moment
Right,
or what we might need or what is an unmet need? And
right.
those can then, like you were saying, we might have a cranky response or a very cranky response because,
Yes, yes. Well, then we're more likely just to respond and react.
yeah,
We're just react. We're in reaction mode.
yes, definitely.
And if we're not checking in with ourselves, we're going to be that pinball that just like bounces all over the place, and people are like, "Ooh, like
Yeah,
what's this?" Can you talk a little bit more about boundaries and rest? Because like I feel like we don't do that enough.
I
As I
agree.
mean, I'm talking about me as a mom. Like,
Yeah,
don't do that enough. Like,
yeah.
can you dive into that a little bit more?
Yeah, no, of course. Let's go with the rest one
Okay.
first because
Yeah.
I think that has been definitely a journey. I even say more of a
Hmm.
relationship because I used to kind of see rest as a reward.
Hmm.
So I could rest once all the children were, in bed, the house was clean, and I was ready for tomorrow. All the uniforms are, all of that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
rest was kind of a reward, and it happened at the end of the day. And really, if I had some time to rest, I was lucky.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I thought, I'm not sure this is how it's supposed to be, especially because I'm looking at the sustainability aspect.
Hmm.
So for me, I had to start checking some of my mindset around rest and the deserving rest. And I had to do some work on, no. No, actually, I do deserve rest. We all deserve rest. We all need to take a break. But I think what was key for me, once I'd done some work on the mindset and how I thought about rest,
Mm-hmm.
for me, the journey was then about what is rest to me.
Hmm.
So for some people, laying in a bath or laying in the settee, that's not my idea of rest. So I had to give myself permission to explore what does rest look like for me. And for me, walking outside or going to the gym
Hmm.
is rest for me. It's a
Hmm.
break from work. It
Hmm.
energizes me, but it also allows my mind to rest and stop. I don't really need to think. I can daydream while I'm at the gym or going on a walk.
Yeah.
Um, and so for me, that was the kind of journey. What is rest to me? It's not a one size fits all.
Right.
And
Right.
that's one of the things that, especially for my clients, it's like, oh, so I can kind of pick what's rest for me. And it's like, yes, it's what you feel is kind of a break and a rest where you feel relaxed and
Hmm.
you're pausing, whatever that looks like for you. For some, it might be art or creative, but for me,
Right.
it's moving. And so
Yeah.
rest doesn't need to also be stationary.
So that's I think a really key point because sometimes we get wrapped, I feel like we get wrapped up in a definition of, of what it looks like. So like rest, and you think of, oh, we need to go for rest. Well, then I need to be like laying on my bed or laying on my couch and like there's nothing around and like that would drive me nuts. Like I can't take, I'm like, I can't sit still, like, and so I feel like we have to, like you said, we have to like change our mindset around it. We have to we have to dig into what that word means to us or
Yeah.
how we define it.
Yes.
And so, in what you're talking about is like, oh, if you give yourself permission to define it how it works for you,
Yeah.
you're better able to accept and want to decide to do that.
Exactly.
And so, it could be like what I would term like self-care type things.
Yeah. Yeah. It could be. Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I'm with you. I need movement. So
Mm.
to me, when you define it as like a break from work, a break from, the organization of
Yeah.
schedules or, whatever that your brain has to, have brain power to do. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, well, going for a walk. And like yesterday I was swimming laps and, like something that doesn't take brain power, but it's repetitive for
Yeah.
me would be
Yeah.
rest.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. And I think for me, once I gave myself permission, it's like, actually, this works for me. And I feel that actually I do have periods of rest, not just at the end of the day, because
Mhm.
I view it differently now. I can
Yeah,
have it throughout the day. So again, it taps into that sustainability of how we're leading ourselves.
right. So just plugging in a little bit, even just like, hey, putting on a song or some, some music just in
Yeah.
between things or something can be that rest break,
Yeah.
for somebody. But how do you see yourself and others once they incorporate rest as something that's not at the end of the day, that can look so different, that can be, implemented throughout the day? What is the benefit?
Ugh, where do we start? There- There's so many. I think the sustainability piece
Hmm.
for a start. So it's not like work, 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 kill
Hmm.
yourself, and then if you're still alive, have a break.
Right, right,
It's
right.
actually that sustainability. I think having the rest throughout the day. I know for me and my clients, that sense of empowerment because you've chosen
Mm.
what works for you and how you've kind of arranged your schedule. I know
Hmm.
that when I've had a good day of rest in between, I'm more
Hmm.
creative, I'm more productive, um, I'm I'm more in touch with my feelings, my needs, my
Hmm.
communication is better.
Hmm.
So yeah, the list goes on and on and on. It's so good for us to give our brain and our body, depending on how you define
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
that those rests and those breaks so that they can then go back in. I mean, often I'll be at work, I'll be working, and I think, oh, I just can't solve this. Let me close it down. I go for a walk, 10 minutes. I'm not even thinking about it. I'll come back and go, yep, that's what it is. I've solved it. And I won't, subconsciously, I was thinking about it, but I was looking at the trees or the
Right.
boats or whatever it was. And it's like, actually, I've just come back and now I can
Yeah,
crack on. So those 10 minutes, rather than me sitting kind of racking my brain,
right,
is wasted
right.
time. Whereas actually I've gone out, I've gone outside. Normally,
Yeah.
going outside is good for me. I've gone outside and I'm in a state of rest. I'm walking, and actually, I've solved it. So the productivity and the creativity for me are great, apart from all the other benefits, obviously physically and mentally as well.
Right. And I feel like if listeners can like attach that what you were just talking about it, we've all had those times where we're just like racking our brain, we're, trying to do it, whether it's work, whether it's like I think of it as a puzzle and I'm get stuck and I can't figure out any more pieces that fit and or cross or anything. And then you take a break from it, you go do something else, you change your focus, you come back and it's like, oh, right there. It's like solution
Yep.
or the creative thoughts just pour out. So
Yeah.
if you would have stayed there and just like, I gotta finish this, I gotta finish this,
Yeah.
it's just gonna take like so much longer and you're gonna get so frustrated,
Yeah.
time out, take a break,
Yeah.
change of scenery, change of whatever,
Yeah.
come back. It's so much easier. But
Definitely.
it's
Definitely.
that awareness that that's what you need to do.
Definitely. And I think also that awareness. So when I first speak to my clients, they're like, "What? I can't just keep taking breaks." I'm like, "But we're talking minutes. We're not taking like take an hour break every hour. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about micro, little breaks. So some
Yeah,
people go out and have a cigarette or have a vape. You
yeah,
could go out and have a walk and just clear your mind and refresh your thinking. It's the same. If you just force yourself, you're almost creating a block for yourself. Whereas if you
mhm,
give yourself permission to just do
yeah,
something different, and you might need to try a few things to see what
mhm,
works for you.
right, right.
But if you give yourself permission for that, you will find what works for you, and then you can incorporate in that into your routine.
Yeah, yeah. And I feel like what was important, like I heard there, is like you might need different types of breaks.
Yeah,
Like I could be like, strained physically that I've just been physically doing so much that my rest then is not going for a walk. It might actually just be sitting and drinking some cold water.
definitely.
It's just, or just going upstairs or downstairs or just like walk
Yep,
around your room. Like we have to like give ourselves permission to have lots of different
definitely.
types of activities that we call a break or rest,
Yes,
a rest break.
definitely. Yeah.
We need to have that because at different times we need different things depending on what
Definitely,
we do.
definitely. Like earlier today, I went for a walk in one of my breaks. Another time, I just sat and read my book
Yeah.
for
Yep.
a little while. Another time, I just put my headphones in and listened to a song. That's like 4 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you're right. What's going to work for you at that point? If you've kind of got a list of the rest breaks that work for you, you can,
Hmm.
while you're still kind of figuring out, you've got a
Right.
list that you can go to. Well, let me try this and see if that will work. Or
Yeah.
just
Well, and
sitting and
sometimes we
looking out the
forget.
window.
And sometimes we
Pardon?
forget like what it is that works. I mean, we do have to keep a list because like I will get in a rut of doing the same thing,
Yeah,
but sometimes it doesn't work.
yeah,
So I need to try something else. But I
definitely.
but I also love that it doesn't have to take very long. So that's part of the mindset shift we need to take is that we need to remember that, how we're defining this
Yeah,
is going to see how we're feeling it. So if you're like thinking, oh, it's just take us a couple minutes,
yeah,
that's not, good. But if you define it as a rest like an hour, then you're going to say, I don't have time.
exactly, exactly,
But I have time for a minute. I have time for
exactly.
2 minutes. That's it. That's all
Yeah,
it takes sometimes.
yeah, definitely. And I think, the your routine, I know for me,
Mhm.
it even feels, it doesn't just look, and it feels sustainable, because it's not
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm at work and I need to go for 8 hours. No, I'm
Right.
going to go for, I rest before I walk to work. So therefore that's my rest. And then
Hmm.
I'll probably do an hour and then I'll listen to a song. Then I'll
Yeah.
do an hour and walk outside. Or I might just walk to the water machine.
Right. Right. Right.
You
Yeah.
know,
Go get up, go get a glass of water, come back down.
exactly.
It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be very long.
No,
But, I've heard, if we can do that every hour,
yeah,
how much more productive we are than if we're grinding.
definitely. Definitely. And actually, we feel better in ourselves because we're doing those things that energize us and they feel like rest. We're getting a break. For some, maybe having a 5 minute conversation with someone would be a really good way for them to take a rest break. Go and do that and be energized by that other person. I just think these are simple things that,
Hmm.
because we don't view them as rest breaks. We don't see the benefits of that always, I think.
Right, right. And so it's really checking in, on what your definition is and then like challenging that to
Definitely.
make it timing, the aspects of it, all of that.
Yeah.
I want to get to boundaries.
Yes. Boundaries is a big one.
Yes,
And
I know it is.
has been a real journey for me, and it is all of my clients. We always, every single client I've had, we always look at boundaries and we always look at rest and breaks.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think boundaries was one of those things. My boundaries used to be really poor. I would just say yes to everything because
Mhm,
I kind of was maybe a bit scared to say no, or
mhm,
thought people wouldn't like me if I
mhm.
said no. And so again, I had to do some work on my thought patterns and my
Yeah.
self-talk and where has that come from and what boundaries
Mhm,
have been modeled to me? And actually, what lines do I want to draw for myself?
mhm.
And what
Yeah.
does that look like at home and at work and in different ways, emotionally, physically, etc. So for me, I started really small because I think when you're used to saying yes to everything, it was like, how am I going to start saying no? And so I just kind of started with one thing, and I just kind of said, okay, if I don't want to do something, rather than just saying yes and maybe feeling a little bit resentful, even
Hmm.
though I'd said yes, actually, I'm going to start saying no to the things that I don't want to do. And I just, because then it wasn't planned, I didn't have to do it once a day or once a week. I just thought,
Right, right.
as and when it comes up, I'm just going to
Mhm,
practice. And the more I did it, the more I got comfortable with the wording that I wanted to use.
mhm, mhm,
And and over time, once I got more comfortable with that, it's like, right, okay, now I'm going to try something else.
mhm.
So
Yeah,
I'm a bit more comfortable with saying no to things I don't want to do.
right.
What can I focus on now? So it takes a long time, but what I wanted it to be sustainable. I didn't want
Mhm.
it to feel like, oh, I've got to say no to all of these things. So then it feels like pressure rather than me kind of finding what works for me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
This is about me leading myself, so it has to be
Mhm,
my
mhm,
choice. I mean, even recently at the weekend, we were supposed to spend the weekend with my eldest daughter and her husband because it's Father's Day in the UK. Sunday just gone, and actually, we were so tired with a busy few weeks that we set the boundary. And I contacted her and I said, as much as we would love to spend the weekend with you and your husband, actually, we're just so tired. And so the boundary was actually, we can't come this weekend, but let's get another date in so we see you really soon.
Yeah.
Um, Now, there would have been a time when I just wouldn't have done that
Mhm. Yeah.
because actually it was about, oh, I'm really looking forward to this time. And it doesn't matter if I'm exhausted and probably can't string two words together. We're just going to drive 3 hours and we're going to do that. And it's like, this is not good for anybody. This isn't good for me.
Mhm. Mhm.
Actually,
Yeah.
for me to get the best and the most out of that time, I had to put that boundary in place and say, not right now, but let's sort out a time where I don't feel so exhausted and so tiring with all of these other things that have been going on the last few
Mm.
weeks so that I
Right.
can give my best for that time that we're together.
Yes.
So again, like the rest, it was very much for me about mindset. What have I told myself? What have I seen modeled?
Mhm.
Because that was a
Mhm.
big one for me. I'd seen the women in my life just kind of very much serving others
Yeah.
to and kind of overlooking their own needs. And so I just kind of
Mhm.
followed suit. And it
Yeah.
was like, no, actually, you need to take stock because
Mhm.
if we're going to change for, my daughters and other people and future generations, we need to
Yeah.
kind of develop those skills to be able to do that and empower others to do the same.
Right. Right. So do a lot of your clients start with like, hey, I'm going to set a boundary on things that I don't want to do? Is that
Yeah.
like do you feel like that's like the easiest for people to start with?
Yes. And one of the things that, because saying no, I think when you're always used to saying yes, whether that's a work or a home context, it's like, I feel a bit bad just saying no. So we also play with what language are you going to feel
Yeah.
comfortable with? Because we don't want that to be a barrier so that you don't then try what it feels like.
Yeah.
You just
Yeah.
stick to, actually, I'll just say yes, it's safer, even though
Right.
you know potentially it's impacting your health. So that's when we normally start because it's normally if you say what boundaries do you want to kind of start with, they can normally easily say, actually, I do this and I don't want to.
Yeah.
Okay, an example that I we speak about regularly is people not taking their lunch break. I don't know if that's an issue in the USA, but in the UK, lots of people don't take their lunch break, or they work through their lunch break, or they sit at their desk when it's their lunch break. So that's normally a good one. I want to take a break. I need to do X, Y, Z,
Mhm.
but you're sitting at your desk for your whole hour that you don't get paid for. So that's normally one where we can start as well if they don't want to start
Mhm.
with the no. It's like, actually, I'm going to start taking my hour break. And yeah, it can be hard because it's like, I'm going to get up and I say to people, I'll be back in an hour. And everyone looks at you because it's so unusual. When it's like,
Right.
oh, and then I want to sit back down. It's like, okay, remember, what are you doing it for? What's your why?
Right. Right.
And
Right.
then, once they kind of develop that habit,
Yeah.
then they can move forward. And it's like, actually, now I want to look at this. So we just kind of build it up, because then they get the evidence of the actions that
Mhm.
they're taking, and the changes to their mindset is really helping them to make the changes they want to see in their life.
Yeah, yeah. Because what I'm hearing is not only just like, okay, yeah, it sounds easy, like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to say yes to something I don't want to do.
Yeah,
But then that whole rush of like, how do I say that?
yeah,
Like, why am I doing this?
yeah,
Traditions or routines or, social influence or however can like really push back. So getting kind of clear on, okay, yep, this is a rest break. Why are you doing this? How is
yeah,
it going to help you? Like, what's the intention behind it? And finding the words, because I feel like that is, and also like what's going to happen when like you do get those stares from coworkers like you're doing what? Like
yeah,
this is what we do. And I'm like, "Oh no, like we have to like look at all of that." I would
yeah,
feel like because
definitely.
otherwise you would just like cave and just do what you normally do.
Yeah. And what we would have done in our coaching session is done all of that. What are you going to
Yeah,
do if someone says this or does this?
right.
So that
Right.
we're kind of addressing the obstacles before they come, so that they
Yep.
can go, oh yeah, we spoke about that and we
Yeah.
agree, I said this is what I'm going to do. So
Right.
I'm ready for that. I
Yeah.
don't have that kind of mental block like freeze. It's like, no, actually, this is what I'm gonna do.
And
So
then it makes that boundary easier. Like you feel really empowered by
yeah,
your choice because you've
definitely.
thought through it. You just know it's good for you. You know the language. You have, kind of role played how it's gonna, different
Yep.
possibilities, and you know how you're gonna respond. It's
Yeah.
such empowering feeling.
Yeah.
And then do they check back in in themselves when they get done with that and just see like,
Yep. Yep, they check back in, and normally, I'll get a little email or a, guess what? I did this
yeah,
today, and this is what happened, and this is what. So yeah, it's great to see that kind of progress, and for them to gather that evidence that
hmm, yeah,
actually you're doing it, you're doing the work.
doing it
As
and
I'm not saying it's easy, but
no,
you're
no,
doing it, you're committed to it, and you're seeing the changes. It's your choice, which
right.
is,
Right.
like you say, so empowering.
Yeah, I feel like that check-in and that like validation that you did it and like the celebration of the win like just reinforces like, yes, this is my choice. This is a boundary. And man, that feels good.
Yes,
And I want to feel that again. Yeah.
exactly.
And then it's easier to tell the difference between when you kind of give up your boundary, give up your
Yes.
to somebody else versus when you make it clear and you stand your ground.
Definitely. Definitely. I had a client this week when I did their check-in, actually. They were like, I'm really noticing other people's boundaries. I just was oblivious before. And it's like, okay, this is good. So you're becoming self-aware, but you're also becoming aware of others' boundaries, because
Yeah.
you might have crossed those
Yeah.
unintentionally.
Right, right. And just being in an awareness of it just creates this energy where you can kind of see it and you become a better person and for yourself, but also, in relationship to others and
Definitely.
honoring theirs.
Definitely.
Awesome,
Definitely.
awesome. Oh my gosh, there's so much here. Like people are like, okay, I resonate. Let's go. Where do I find out more about Mel? What is she doing? Where do they find you?
Okay, so I am on LinkedIn.
Okay,
I am on Instagram, and I have got a website.
okay.
On my website, although I'm a self-leadership coach where I focus um, with women on how they're leading themselves, I do training as well. But on my
Mhm.
website, that doesn't really show. It's
Okay.
it's on there. So if anyone is interested to have a chat, they can go on there and book book a free call and we can have a chat and see if we're a good fit and kind of go from there. Or even if they just want to contact and have a chat and get some tips,
Right.
I'm more than happy to help the women
Yes.
out there that feel, actually, if you could just answer these questions for me, that would be really helpful to help with my journey.
Yeah.
I'd love to do that.
Oh yes. Any way we can, kind of spread love and spread our knowledge around and just give a little bit of help to somebody. That is so
Definitely.
awesome. I will put the links to all of that in the show notes. So if somebody's just like, okay, where's that at? I will definitely put that in there and then it's easy for them to find you. So I
Brilliant.
appreciate it. Appreciate it. As we wrap up today, is there any, thing that's left unsaid that you want the listeners to hear or anything that you really want to leave them with?
I think the main thing for me would be continuing along the theme of rest, which I guess could intertwine with boundaries as well,
Mhm.
because you are
Yeah.
setting boundaries
Yeah.
to take your rest. So it's the actually it's not work-life balance for me, it's the kind of rest and work and play is kind of all
Hmm.
intertwined, and it's just really finding what works for you. That's what I would
Hmm.
encourage everybody to do. Find the thing that works for you. It doesn't have to work for anyone else.
Right.
It's about
Right.
you. But rather than seeing maybe work and rest as separate,
Hmm.
see them as one
Yeah.
whole thing. And
Right.
yeah, just find what works for you.
Yeah, because it's all one. Like
Yeah,
it's all of us.
yeah,
But some days, work might take more than,
of
life
course,
and rest might be, but it's kind of finding that harmonious balance.
definitely.
It's not like balance having to be equal, but it's
Yeah,
just like what's working, as we're moving throughout life, what is working in the moment. And
definitely.
just finding that and knowing where your boundaries are and how you rest the best and
Yeah.
then making it work for you.
Definitely. And also knowing that in different seasons of life that will change.
Yeah.
So you
Yes.
don't just kind of sort it out and then that's it. As things change, when our youngest left home in September, it's like, okay, we need to look at how this works again. How does our rest and boundaries
Mhm.
and kind of home life work now that it's just me and you? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
That's
so
totally
again,
different than when you had four young ones.
exactly, exactly. So I think it's also as women, us having permission, as we're in different seasons of life, whatever that looks like, we can change and mold that and change it. So again, it continues to work for us in all seasons, and that can look different.
Yeah, and it does. And I think that ties into like, just growing as a person. Just
Yeah,
as we age, as we gain our wisdom and grow, we're constantly learning about
yeah,
ourselves. And so we're needing to learn what's going to work in this next phase of life.
exactly.
Might be different than
Yeah,
what it was 5 years ago or even yesterday. So
yeah, exactly, exactly, definitely.
oh, so much. Thank you so much, Mel. I have enjoyed the conversation and just a great reminder again on how we define things. We need to open that up.
Yeah,
So let's open up and expand our definition of rest and boundaries, and let's just embrace awareness of what they mean to us and how we can live our best life by
brilliant.
creating those for us.
Yeah,
So thank you so
definitely.
much.
No, thank you, Peggy. It's been great. Thank you.